everyone. I'm Mercer Dahms, the Vice President of U.S. Development for Join Mayshad. As you know, Mayshad is an ecosystem of brands for women by women, connecting women to each other and to the companies, causes, and organizations that champion equity for women professionally and personally. We cannot tell you how thrilled we are to be with you today live. It's our first live show in many, 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 many months. And it just happens to be Election Day 2020, November 3rd, 2020. I'm joined today by two very special guest stars. And as Paula Jennings mentioned right before we went on the show, we're amongst three goddesses. So that gives you all a sense of where we're going to go today. This is going to be an amazing conversation, very uplifting and positive as we enter into the tallying of the results for Election Day 2020. Please make sure to check out all of our content on our YouTube channel at Join Mayshad and our website, joinmayshad.com, where you too can learn more about how to become a member for us and with us as together we revolutionize how professional women connect, engage, and do business together. So my very special guest today on this very special day, I think is going to be one of the most hopeful days of 2020 yet to come. Paula Jennings. Paula served as a Chief Operating Officer of Finance for a global investment bank. She is now the CEO and founder of Anam Evolution, which provides global health leaders with holistic wellness services. And Simone Baker, who is a certified Kundalini yoga teacher and a Reiki practitioner. And Simone excels in transformational leadership and is a sacred sexuality coach. This is going to be one exciting conversation. Welcome, Simone. Welcome, Paula. Hi.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you.
So, it's so fascinating, I think, to think about, everything that's happened in 2020 to date and where we are today. And yet we often talk about within the Mayshad sisterhood, this feeling of hope and transformation and rebirth, and really using this time to figure out, honestly, who do we want to become when we grow up? Mm-hmm. So I want to do a check-in with each of us just to see, where we are at, because I think what's going to be so interesting about this show is that for all of us watching live, it's live, which is really exciting. But then also, I honestly hope that we use this as a time capsule moment in time where maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, we look back on this episode in this moment in time and really reflect upon how far we've come. That's my hope, is that we take this moment and use it as a birth, as a new beginning. So Paula and Simone, how are each of you doing today? Tell me what's going through your mind. What are you thinking? Paula, let's start with you.
Okay, so I really have a sense of hope and optimism. I feel very grounded today. I feel very well, on the planetary side, Mercury just went direct, which is really good. But within my own body, I feel good. I got up this morning, I went for a walk with the dog. I did the things that keep me grounded and keep me in my bubble, if you like. I think it's important for us all to have some form of daily routine where we're connecting in with our center and our own alignment. And so that no matter what day it is, whether it's election day or it's just another day, that we feel like we have the authority over our day. Mm. So I'm having a good day today. There's been bumps in my day. There's been a lot of interesting things happen. My sister right now is in the emergency room in Ireland with a cardiac issue. She's fine.
Oh my God, I got Paula.
Yeah, but she's absolutely fine. But I had a great conversation with her. We both know that everything is okay. She's just taking precautions. So so that to me, obviously family, and that's the thing that COVID has helped me with more than anything, is to recognize the importance of family in my life. So I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling optimistic. I'm feeling that no matter what the outcome, we are on the brink of an evolutionary change for humankind that is going to bring us closer together as a human family. And I am surrendered. And I'm really happy to be here with you guys, my bestie Simone. And both of you know where my bodies are buried, so it feels good to just to share this space with you today. So thank you. I love, Jan, the idea of this being a moment in time that we can reflect back on, and that's what it's about. It's about moments. It really is about the moments that we create in our lives, and I'm just delighted to be here with both of you. Over to you, Simone.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful soul. Simone, hi. How are you?
Thank you. Well, thank you, Paula. That was beautiful. Similarly, I feel great, actually. Like this is a really important day politically, of course. And I think that what's important for me and for all of us is to, besides all of that, find ways to take care of ourselves, find ways to make ourselves feel good and nurtured and nourished inside of our bodies and our families. And so today, like Paula, I did the things that makes me feel really great. I had a little dance party before I got on this call, which always makes me feel amazing. So I feel good. I feel centered in my body. And, what this moment in time is demonstrating to us more than anything is that change is inevitable, and change, no matter where it's coming from and where we think it's going to go, we have to be able to manage ourselves to flow and move with whatever changes it is that come, and center ourselves into knowing that, besides anything outside of ourselves, that we can take care of ourselves, we can take care of our families, and we can take care of the people, who we love. And so to me, this moment in time is really about how do we prep ourselves to manage the change, whatever change that is. And so I'm feeling great about that.
Simone, I couldn't agree with you more, particularly around change is inevitable. And when we reflect upon where we were 4 years ago now, things felt very different, obviously, right? Like 2020, year of the pandemic. So many of the injustices in this country have yet been brought to light yet another time. And it seemed to me that we were all feeling very hopeful 4 years ago as well, not knowing what was going to be in front of us. Let's just for fun, where were we? Where were each of us 4 years ago? Paula, where were you the day of the election 4 years ago?
So where I was with you, if you remember. We were at a Six Figures event. It was in the city. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was a beautiful setting as always. We were surrounded by incredibly powerful women who were gathering to really talk about, there was an air of excitement in the room, and we were talking about what role we played. We were playing in supporting each other, first of all, but also in bringing who we are to the surface. And it was that feeling for me. I remember it being a feeling of, it's okay. I can be seen for who I am. I can talk. I can be in a space surrounded by women. It felt like it was the beginning, in a way, for me, of becoming more of who I am and being free and willing to speak about what I really felt. And I remember on the way home, I had an inkling that Trump was going to win. I will be honest. I had this sort of sense, and I was thinking, oh, what is tomorrow going to bring? And I just knew, I felt that it was going to bring that news, and it did, of course. But that's where I was. I won't say anything more. That's where I was.
Paula, what I remember so vividly about that night, and that was the last of a 3-part episode that we did, bringing together women from all sides of the political spectrum to have honest conversations about what women truly wanted, right? Because even then, 4 years ago, there was so much divisiveness across party lines, so much worse now. But even then, and thinking about, in all of those conversations that we had over that multiple month series, what was most striking was that, even for the women who showed up and made their voices heard and stepped into their power, like the outcomes weren't that different. Like we didn't really have that many differences, because we all wanted access to healthcare. We all wanted equal opportunities in the workplace. We all wanted equal pay. We all wanted healthy children. We all wanted access to education.
Right.
But what I'm finding now, as we've lived 4 years into it, and then here we are today, there's so much more that's bubbled to the surface. And Simone, I can't help but go back to your point that you made earlier in the conversation around how change just has to happen, right? And I think that 4 years ago, there was still kind of this political ideology that's so ingrained into how we think about politics in the US. And for better or for worse, what Trump has done is that he's really caused a lot of uproar, right? So he's caused things that were really pushed underground for so long, for 4 years, if not, continuation of things that have been pushed underground for much longer, to really bubble to the surface and create those incredible moments of tension where something ultimately has to give. Simone, where were you 4 years ago?
Wow. I love everything about what you just said, and I'll comment about that a little bit. But 4 years ago, I think, like every Tuesday morning, I get up and I do my thing, and I went to the polls, which is like right around the corner from my home, and I cast my ballot, and I felt accomplished, and went along with my day. I think what really is important for me now, as it was back then, and now even more so, is thinking about what I, as an individual, can do to create the change that I want to see. I think that a lot of us, of course, we take elections very seriously because they are. And I also think that what's really, really important, even more so now for us to do, is to think about, okay, well, what is it that I want to create? Let me not just give that responsibility to create change to someone else and just kind of like, come back home and say, okay, well, I did what I needed to do, and now I'm just going to go back to my life. It's really about, taking that self-responsibility about creating the world and influencing and impacting, our immediate environment and how that will ripple out. And so I take a lot of responsibility in keeping that like at the center of who I am and what it is that I feel that I can affect as an individual, and try to speak to that, more often, because I think that it's yes, we do have to elect a president, and at the same time, there are so many other elected officials that we need to, make sure that we are keeping tabs on. And then it also comes down to me as an individual. How am I going to, show up in a way that I would expect someone else to show up for me. So that's a little bit about what I was doing and the mindset that I had at the time. But you said something about, the change and what happens to us as individuals when we show up, to vote. And I think that, what's incredibly important is for us to be reminded that, we have agency. And that's a lot of responsibility that no one can take that away from us. And so, having the courage, you mentioned that, we're talking about courage here, having the courage to know that and to look back at ourselves and say that, yeah, I can do this. I can create that change. I think that's just so massively important, especially now at this time, because it's not up to anyone else besides ourselves to create, the world that we want. It's not up to the president. It's not up to the senator or the congressperson. It's really up to us. So that's kind of where I am.
Do both of you think that because of what's happened over the last 4 years, and particularly this year, that there's more of a sense of personal responsibility, whereas in the past we may have relied upon our companies or organizations or institutions or the academy or whatever that larger body was, or a series of bodies. But now clearly we have to be the change that we want to see in others. We have to project a different way of life, a different way of thinking, a different philosophy, a different just existence, if we really truly want to be better. And I'm not sure, at least for me personally, I've always been an activist. I've always been, dedicated to community service, but I feel like even for me personally, there's something different this time around with even how I show up. And I'm wondering if both of you feel that way too, in your communities, that, you're a part of incredibly rich, diverse communities as well. And I'm wondering if that's something that you're seeing in your conversations you're having with others as well. Paula, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have many thoughts. And I love where you both went with the conversation around personal responsibility, Simone. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We are, I view leadership very differently now than I did 4 years ago as a result of everything that has been revealed. I think it has been a time of revelation for us to recognize that we cannot be asleep at the wheel. We have to take responsibility, as Simone said, and that responsibility is actually, it's what gives us our freedom. That's how we build a free America. It's by each individual taking responsibility for what they do project out into the world and what it is that they want to create. So it's something that I feel very strongly about is sharing what I've learned over the last 4 years about myself, where I think 4 years ago, I probably would have had a little bit more of a victim mentality and would have been felt myself at the will of what was ever happening in the collective. And now what the shift has been to, I recognize that I am the collective, what I can put out there, what I consciously think or want to create is what is created. And that we are all one. I mean, we are all connected in the ethers, if you like. And it's up to each one of us. And I think we're coming to a tipping point. I feel like what has happened over the last 4 years has woken us up on many levels. And it has woken us up to the fact that we as humankind, we as this country are not really treating each other the way that we would all want to see each other treat each other. And now it's time for us to start. And I think that COVID has really helped bring that to the surface and also has helped communities to come closer, because we're back now in our homes, we're back in our neighborhoods. I've spoken to neighbors that I haven't spoken to in a long time, and in the community of women that I serve and that serves me, the conversation has been all about each one of us becoming the leaders that we want to be. Each one of us leading our lives, leading our families, leading our, that's where it starts. And when you start to take responsibility for that and to do that in a conscious way, you impact the larger, the larger collective, which is quite amazing to think that we have that power within us. And I really think it's the unlocking of the feminine power, and leadership is shifting towards less of this directive, authoritative power over to more of the feminine qualities of compassion, of empathy, of understanding. And we had to go to the other side and see that was like what was like in order for us to decide and make the choice to go this direction. So this is the direction I'm going in. It's the direction that my community is coming with me, and you both included. And that's what I want to project out into the world, a world that is kinder, a world that is more empathetic and more willing to see the other person's point of view, to bring us together, to unify rather than to separate.
So question for you both, and we'll start with Simone. So Paula, I absolutely agree with everything you just said, 2000%. 2 questions, actually no, about 5, but let's see if I can start with one. This is going to become another Jan question if we don't watch out. Okay, so my question is, so I absolutely agree with everything you said. And yet for many women that we speak with on a daily basis, there's also a sense of exhaustion right now too, right? And so as positive as we try to be on a daily basis, and as much of that we do really feel in our hearts, and we have hope, and we, reflect, and, we want to create bigger change in the world. But let's face it, like from a day-to-day perspective, that can also be very exhausting, particularly for women, because we know that women are bearing the brunt of the social reproduction within the home right now. So how do we balance that? How do we balance that in a way that we really can stay authentic and true to ourselves and step into a different sense of agency, or more enlightenment, or more self-power, more whatever that descriptive phrase is, but yet also just honestly stay sane. I mean, making this conversation very real now. How do we just stay sane during this moment in time? Simone, I'll start with you.
Love that question. I love that question because, I think as most of us, we've all come up against like a moment where it's like, I think I'm going to lose it. I know that for myself, I definitely felt that way, during this period. It's like, wait, what? Like, I don't even feel like I'm in my body. I feel so out of sorts and completely stretched and, feeling a lot of like emotions like shame or guilt for even feeling this way during this time because folks are, having such a hard time with family. They're probably losing family members and the like. And I think that, self-care is where it starts. Self-care, hands down, for me, is where it starts. I have the experience of it myself to get to the point where it's like, wait a minute, I'm trying to do so much. I feel so completely worn out and exhausted and stretched thin, but I want to do so much. What can I do? And it always, always, always comes back to self-care. How can I give back to myself? And when I've been able to stop all of the things to take care of myself, I always come out more alive, more resourced to do the things that I want to do, more clarity, I can't say enough about self-care. And I think that, as women, we tend to be multitaskers. We want to do so much, and there's always so much, on the table for us to do. But I think that when we take that role of leadership, and I think naturally we're leaders, when we take that responsibility of being a leader in our own lives for ourselves, it just resources us to be a leader in our families, in our communities, in our companies, and in the world. It just, for me, has to go back to, how am I taking care of myself? Am I giving myself a break? Am I, taking 5 minutes out to just breathe, to just close the door and ask folks to just give me a moment to just give back to myself. I think that starting from there and knowing that, it's not going to happen overnight. It's about creating, a system, a routine, taking baby small steps and continuing to give back to ourselves that allows us to really fully show up for ourselves in our lives. And that creates a gateway for us to show up for everyone else who needs us. So I think that's an excellent question. And I think for women, the importance of that, the importance of what can seem so small, what can seem so like, it's easy to brush that off. I just don't have time for myself right now. And we do that a lot. We all know that. We're shaking our heads like, yeah. It's like, I don't have time to, give myself 10 minutes. But being able to say, no, this is just that important for us to be able to do that for ourselves because we benefit and then everyone benefits. And it's really beautiful when we're able to experience that.
Do you think it's also about becoming really crystal clear on what you can say yes to and what you should say no to? And really weeding out, I can't tell you the number of people that we've talked to, men and women, during this time where conversations have ranged everything from I've learned how to weed out the toxic people from my life to I've learned to actually how to say no, not because I necessarily want to say no, but just because I have to, but just to get into that practice of saying no to the things that you just can't manage right now. And knowing that there's a difference between a need and a want and a desire, I think has been key for a lot of women in our ecosystem as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you want to take that.
You go.
I just want to say really quickly, like boundary creation is one of those little keys, knowing how to create boundaries. And a lot of us don't know how to do that. And we don't know, like what our boundaries are to even, start to create those boundaries. So I think that that's a key that we can get very, very, resourced in figuring out what's important to me, like, and how do we connect to our bodies in order to figure out, like, okay, what feels good, which is a practice that I started, I probably last year. It's like, I'm not going to do anything if it doesn't feel good. Let me check in with myself. Okay, that feels good. Or, well, that doesn't feel good. To just use our body as a tool to help us to create those boundaries in our interactions with others.
So you could also say that, Simone, about people, right? From the perspective of, really truly asking yourself, how is this person making me feel? Because I think we have a tendency to be so much in our minds, right? And we analyze. As women, we analyze, we critique, we analyze others, we critique ourselves. But to really step back and say, how is this person making me feel? How is this conversation making me feel? How is this encounter making me feel? And then, I really firmly believe that we're the energy that we put out there to the world that comes back to us as well.
Yeah.
Paula, would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I love the talking about boundaries. Like, I think boundaries, especially for the feminine, it's something that we're not used to. The feminine energy is not used to, because we want to flow, we want to give, we want to always be there to care for everybody, partly because that was always the messages that we got through the patriarchal, what was told to us. And so I think it's particularly hard for the feminine to set boundaries. But for me, it has been absolutely the key to freedom. I'm on a theme of freedom today, because it is, as Simone said, it unlocks that ability to connect into yourself and to decide, okay, what am I going to bring to the situation? And if the situation doesn't feel good, it's okay for me to zip up. I like to do a zip up of my energy, close it, and just not feel like I have to keep on giving, right? Because we're all leaky buckets. We all leak out energy everywhere. If we're intentional about our energy and what it is that we're putting out, and part of that is about creating the boundary, then we're not rocked off our center as easily. And then we can stay on mission. We can say that no easier. I used to have I remember my first coach when I was on Wall Street, he gave me the first exercise he gave me the first week was I had to say no to 3 people. That's how bad I was at it, right? And it was so difficult for me, because of course the 3 people who come into my office, it's like, how do I say no? And I think developing the capability to say no, and it's usually in the service of a greater yes, right, is easier when we have a vision and a clear idea of where we're going with our lives. Because you can ask yourself, as Simone said, how does this feel in my body? Which is a really important question to check into your energy and how that feels. And also on the other side, to be able to say, okay, will this further me in what I'm achieving in my mission? Is this bringing me closer to making my vision come alive, or is it taking me further away? And I also believe there's no wrong answers, right? So we can make decisions sometimes, and in there is where if you have a strong vision, you're always going to come back. But developing that daily habit of earthing, of getting onto the earth in some way, or even if you're not close to a park or a garden, just really connecting in with the earth energy, which brings us down into our bodies and helps us to be able to process and metabolize what comes at us, because we are completely inundated on a daily basis with so much technical information, so much stuff is being thrown at us. And if we're not willful, then we will be at the will of somebody else. So that's, to me, why it's most important, and it's not easy. I find myself getting distracted. Yesterday, I had such a moment where I felt like my heart was going to explode. I went into a panic, and I haven't had that in a while. And it's like, okay, what are the tools that I need to use in order to bring me back down to center? And that's going to happen to all of us. And, not to scare people, I think it's probably going to happen on a more regular basis, that we start to have, because of the shifts in the energy and everything that's happening. So it's even more important now to develop that practice that you can rely on, that you can pull out at any given moment. Because until you have it sort of down and you're doing it every day, you won't default to it. You'll default to your, what we do. We tend to go into this breathing that is from our chest only. We forget to breathe down to our belly. I'm doing it now, actually. Take a deep breath and shake it out, of course, always shaking it out.
Yeah. Everyone, let's take an intermission and shake it out. I love shaking it out.
Yes, shaking it out is so good. Feeling your body.
So here's a continuation question for both of you. So Paula and Simone, we've been talking about tapping into our overall strategic mission, right? And we talk about, everything from strategic planning within the corporate setting to, what is our overall personal mission for our own personal lives. And so this grandiose plan that kind of sits up here someplace, right? But yet today there's so much uncertainty in the world, right? From, again, November 3rd, 2020, to just, things like, healthcare and COVID, what's going to happen as we reach and peak into the third wave, to, job uncertainty, given the fact that we still haven't really figured out how to deal with the very quickly changing natures by which all industries are totally disrupting right now. To just, the uncertainty of what America and what it means to live in the United States of America today means, right? How do we frame all that, right? Like, how do we stay above some of the noise? And would love to get your thoughts on this concept. So there are many people that we've talked to as a part of the Mayshad ecosystem who've said, okay, I'm just going to bubble myself in my own little island here, live my life for a while, and just kind of check out, right? Like, disengage from the news, disengage from social media, disengage from a lot of the conversations I used to partake in, and just kind of pretend like it all just kind of exists here in what I can control, right? Because largely we're talking about issues of what you can and can't control as we think about agency. To I'm going to go out there, I'm going to fight the good fight, I'm going to make change happen. So obviously pros and cons to both sides, but would love to get your take on that as we're having this conversation today. Like, where do you both stand on kind of this very, very distinct opposite sides of that table? Simone, let's start with you.
Let's see here. I mean, honestly, like for myself, I think it's how do I want to frame this? Because I've done a little bit of both. There was one moment where I was like completely like inundated with the news. I felt like I needed to know everything. I needed to, like be educated and participate in the process of, everything that's happening. And what I found for myself was that wore me out, and that made me feel hollow and very depleted inside. And, then I decided to, not do as much social media, got rid of all of my subscriptions to the news and all of the notifications on all of that would come through, and, just read the headlines. And I actually feel like that has supported me in getting clear about what you just asked about, what do I want to create for my future? What is the next step for me? Like, there's so many things that are uncertain, and, who do I want to be? Like, what's this next iteration of Simone? And I will tell you that, getting rid of some of the noise and the distraction, because I mean, really, how much news do you really need to watch in order to be, informed about what's going on? Not much, because there's right? So
that's a good point.
That's it. That'll all the news that I need to know. But honestly, like what that pulling myself out of all of the distraction and the noise, and getting really quiet and using my time in a way that supports me in getting centered and really filling myself up with feeling good in my body, in my being, has supported in just me getting clear about what it is that I want to create. Do I want to stay where I am, in this physical space? Do I want to move? What is it that I'm trying to offer to women? What is my gift? How can I package that in a way that I think will be really, really pertinent for this time that we're all moving through? So I think it is important for us to not get completely distracted by all of the noise that's out there, because it's really, really noisy, and use our time in a way that will support in helping us to get even more clear about who we are, how we want to show up for ourselves, and how we want to show up for the world that we want to create. I think that's a big key point.
Yeah,
I love the way you connected the dots to that, because I think you're right in the sense of the more noise, the more external stimulus and the more stuff that we ensure that stays around us, then in some ways it really serves as an excuse not to look deep within yourself, right? To actually do the work to figure out like who you are. Paula, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that that exact thing, that we have as a larger collective have become disconnected from the simple things in life. Like, so from our connection to nature, I mean, to find out who I am, I look at the sunrise and the sunset to find out, am I safe in the world? I look to nature, I look to trees, I look to the things that are bigger than me, that I can fit, that I can feel a sense of, okay, I'm safe in the world. And because of the overload of the media and the news, and a lot of it is fear-based, right? It is designed to have us feel a little bit fearful for whatever reason. And so I think disconnecting from it and building, as Simone said, the connection with yourself. And you can do that through many ways. For me, if I find my own nature in nature a lot, I find like I have these epiphanies about who I am. And especially, when we think about a flower and we think about it doesn't worry about what it's going to be. A rose doesn't worry, am I going to be a rose or am I going to be a sunflower? It knows it's a rose. And it blooms beautifully. And then also, like, it helps us to put into context the seasons of life that we're in. Right now, we're in a season, I guess, collectively of maybe winter. We're a little bit bare. We're standing in the cold. We don't know what's next. But we do know that there's so much happens in winter. It's all happening underground. The trees are going deeper, their roots are going in, and there's seeds being planted. So for me, rather than check into the news, I would rather check into the natural elements around me, which brings me that sense of, I guess, not certainty, but that sense of it's all part of the natural cycle of life. And it gives me that bigger arc, right? And then I can handle the news when it comes. Like, my daughter is the greatest source of news for me because she keeps up with it and I don't at all. I haven't in 5 years since I left Wall Street. I really do not watch the news much. But I do know if that I need to know something, it's going to come my way. And I trust that. But so that's just what I think for me, it's about choosing things that will fill my well. Such as being in nature, such as connecting in with other women or other men, and finding out, like, okay, can I learn something about myself in this conversation? Because ultimately what we're here to do is to get to know ourselves really well, to become intimate with all of our parts, our the ones that may not seem so lovable and the ones that are lovable, and to integrate them. That's, to me, is what the journey of life is about.
I love that analogy, Paula, because I think as we're all now entering the winter months, right? So this is November 3rd, and soon it's going to be, it feels like it's dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon now. We're okay, maybe it's 5 or 5:30, but still. And so as the days get shorter and colder, and we also know that there's a chance for many of us who have had the privilege of being able to eat in restaurants or to go shopping again or to whatever that is, have a little bit of freedom, that chances are things are probably going to close up in many parts of the country again as well, so we can actually come out positively on the other side of this and minimize even more illness and death. But so we talk a lot about kind of the fear and anxiety that's building up as we approach, yet another unknown, which is the winter, which of course we know what happens during the winter. It gets really, very cold. But I love what you just said, Paula, about, like, even though you don't see it happening around you, it's all happening underground, right? There's life and there's activity and there's birth happening. And I think that's so beautiful and such a great meditative tool and technique for us to use as we start to, really kind of hibernate in the upcoming months.
Sometimes I wish I could go asleep and wake me up in March.
Well, that's another idea.
Well, I think that like what you're alluding to in my mind, it just reminds me of the process of slowing down, the process of slowing down to get present, to really notice what's happening, like to notice how we're feeling, to notice all of the things that we are carrying in our bodies, in our emotions, in our, in our mind. I was doing a meditation the other day, and this was supposed to be a really, pleasurable meditation of, like, really just being in the moment. And I noticed how I was not even there. My mind was like, okay, I have to do this thing after I do that, and I have to do this other thing. And it was just like, yeah, like I'm not present to my body. I'm not present to my breathing. And when I noticed that, I was able to, like, bring myself back, and I felt so much presence. I felt so vast. I felt so completely connected that I had like this most amazing, like magical experience. And it was because I was willing, well, first I noticed that I wasn't present. And then I was willing to coach myself back into being in the present moment, and then had the most amazing experience. And so, you know, during this time of it being the season of winter, and also this season of change, discovering who it is that we want to be, discovering what we want to create, how do we want to, like, you know, build this world, you know, regardless of what happens, you know, with the outcome of the election. I think that requires a lot of like presence and slowing down in order to get presence to do that.
You know, as you're talking, I can't help but think about how, as women, we always feel like we need to know, and we always feel like we need to be right. And is there power for us to learn how to say to ourselves more and to others around us, I just don't know?
Yeah. It is so powerful. It is, you know, it's almost like we're unlearning everything that we have learned to date, because everything that we have learned has come from outside of us. It has come from some form of conditioning, some form of, and so much has been put on knowledge as the source of power. Like, I remember when I was on Wall Street, I thought I had to know everything. I thought I had to go into every meeting with all the armor of the knowledge around me, until, you know, towards the latter part of my career, I realized it's not about what I know anymore. It's about what I can intuit. It's about what I can hear and underneath, right? And it's about, and this is the leadership that we're moving towards now. It's this more of a listening and receptive type of way of being, listening and being willing to say, and I think this is true for all leadership, that anywhere where there's hierarchical structures built on something that is knowledge-based or built on power over, we're going to see that that's going to start to have less weight as we move forward. And we're moving towards this world where every individual has a gift to offer, right? Everybody has got something that they bring to the table. And that isn't better or less than anybody else's. It's unique to you. So I think being willing to be yourself and to say, if you're in an area that you don't know, or, you know, if I don't know, and I often ask myself, would I rather be right or be happy? And I think there's a direct correlation between the two, because, you know, sometimes I can see myself, I want to be so right. I want to be right so much that I'm not willing to even see the other person's perspective or to admit that I don't know. So I love that you brought that up, Jan, because I think this is the moment for us all to come together and to recognize that there is nothing that what unifies us is that coming together in the unknowingness, in the uncertainty, in the vulnerability of, we don't know what's to come, but we can create it together. And that's what unifies people too.
Thank you, Paula. Simone.
Yeah, I think just quickly, I think that, you know, as women, we just learn so much shame about not being and having all of the answers to all of the things. And I mean, I think that shame is everywhere in so many different things. And so I think when we're able to say, I don't know, but I'll find out, you know, it's such a powerful way to show up. And so, yeah, I think that I agree with everything that you said, Paula.
So here's a question for both of you. So in our audience today, we have many men who are advocates and allies of us watching as well. And as we think through everything we just said about embracing the feminine power and conversations around how leadership will change, and, you know, themes of, you know, really how I think about emotional intelligence, for example, and that's largely what we've been talking about here. And then as it, you know, you take that body of thought and apply it to the corporate world, I think of that as emotional intelligence. But for the men who are watching us today, what messages can we send to them? What do we need our men allies to hear from us today in this moment in time?
You want me to take that one?
Sure, Paula.
So much to say about that. I think what we want, what I want men to hear is that we're ready, that they're not guilty. I think that I want them to hear that it's up to them to shape their future too. And that every man, that there has been a lot of, there's been a lot of divisiveness around the feminine, the masculine. There's been a lot of, I guess, holding them accountable or blaming men, right? Blaming the masculine. But really what I want men to know is that we're your partners. We want you to be with us. We want you to be the kings that you are, to hold our crowns. I mean, that's the analogy that I use. We do not want to, I know for me, I have emasculated men. I have certainly done that with my behavior. And I am willing, now what I see is that the divine masculine is every bit as sacred as the divine feminine. And those qualities that a man have of protection, of goal setting, of making things happen was really an energy that we needed over the course of the patriarchy. And we're shifting into something different now. So women can do it. We cannot do it on our own. We want men to honor us and to recognize and value the work that we do. I mean, I had this conversation with my ex-husband this week. I want to be valued for the unseen work that I do in the home with my children. And he wasn't sure what I was talking about in the beginning, but I think I want to say to men, come to the table, please be open and listen to what we have to say. And we will, I'll do my very best to not say it in a way that alienates you or has you being blamed, because I understand that in order for me to be enlightened or for me to feel that I'm operating at my full potential, I have, I get to embrace this masculine side of me and to have it be in union with my feminine. So for me, I would say, come join us, start to wake up, start to get together as men together in your own circles, start to talk about the things that you're feeling, don't bottle them up. And when you see behavior that you don't feel is in line with who you are as a person, don't sit and say nothing. Call it out and support the women in your life, your daughters, your wives, your mothers. And this next age is really about us coming together. And I'm excited to watch us enter into that dance.
Ooh, I love that, Paula. Enter into the dance. That's beautiful. I'm envisioning that right now. Thank you.
My dance card is empty. No, I'm kidding.
That's the next show. Our next episode will be our dance party. Simone, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Oh man. I love that question because, we hear so much about, the feminine rising. We hear, a lot also about like toxic masculinity. And I can only imagine that, there are a lot of men out there who are kind of like confused and probably turned off by just the seeming attack, of the masculine and the male. And what I would say to that is, we need men. We need the masculine. It does get to be this beautiful dance. And I think that, the more that we as women can really not put every man into a bucket, as, a bad guy or oh, he's a toxic man or whatever. I think that we as women, knowing that we're moving into a time where there is a feminine that is coming up, there is that feminine leadership that is necessary, that we hold space for men to show up as well. And for us to be able to love them and guide them through the process of really understanding like what this time means for us, for them, and for the future, because it's not about rising up as women and forgetting about, the men and the masculine. It's really about how do we create space for us to be in union, in partnership, to create a world that is beneficial for everyone, for all of us. Like we need, that level of community to be built with the masculine and that partnership to really, take place. So we get to hold space for men, and men get to hold space for the women who are showing up in the leadership positions, because that's also very, very necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I envision this working just swimmingly well for our allies and for our advocates. But yet, to play devil's advocate right now for just a second, we also live in a very divisive moment in time where, and we see this in the news and the media, we see it in conversations we have with our own family members or colleagues or coworkers or associates. And we see it just in the sense of, what does it mean to actually, fulfill your right to vote today, and some of the obstacles that have been presented for some of those who have tried to vote. How do we apply the principles that you both so beautifully illustrated to a nation that's incredibly divided right now and divisive? No matter which way the election goes at the end of the day, or when we find out who won at the end of the week or the end of the month, or however long it takes, but how do we heal and move forward as a country?
That's a big question, Jan.
It is a big question. It's our last question. Our last question, I promise.
Okay. I'm going to answer it I believe that it is each one of us being willing to develop that relationship with ourselves and take responsibility for ourselves. I don't think that it can work any other way. I believe that a great amount of trust is needed. And I also, trusting that the direction that we're being brought in, that the energy that is bringing up all of this stuff and forcing us to look at our darker side, right? To look at the ugly that we might have created and to choose something different as a nation. Like, I believe that process was necessary. We're a very young nation, right? This country is very young. I come from Ireland, which is, very ancient, but this nation was built with, the origins of this nation were built on something that I believe now needs to be healed. And so I trust in the process of that healing as an evolutionary process, just like nature clears and cleans itself out. So as an individual, what I would say, I can only say it for the individual. Every individual has got to take responsibility for how they show up in their lives, how they show up in the lives of their families. And if every one of us were to do that, I think the world would be a different place. I think it's really important for the children, for us to really care for the children who are the next generation. I may not see the world like I want to see it by the time that, I leave this earth, but I do know that if we educate and go back to some of the ancient ways, actually, of where women had a lot of say, the feminine had a lot of say in what laws were passed, and they considered how is this going to impact things 7 generations from now? If we start to bring back some of those principles and remember where we came from and remember what has sustained humanity over this time, I think that we will be fine. But ultimately, it comes back to the choice of each individual to ask themselves the question, who am I? What's my purpose? How do I want to contribute to a better world, and leave a better legacy for the next generations?
Beautiful.
Simone.
I love that. Yeah, this is a big question. And in thinking about it, I think similar to what Paula said, it comes back to personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. I think that we have all experienced some sort of hurt and trauma in our lives. And I think that is really what's allowing that divisiveness to continue, because we haven't taken the time to look within ourselves to create that healing for ourselves and get real with what it is that is behind the anger or the pain or the racism, the sexism, all of that. And I think that, when it comes to creating the world that we want to see, we have to start small, and we have to start with ourselves. That's the most direct way to create that healing, because when we start with ourselves, then we can give ourselves what we need. We can, you know, work on releasing whatever pain, whatever trauma it is that we've endured. And I have a lot of compassion, you know, for people who are angry. I have a lot of compassion because we know that anger doesn't just spring up out of nowhere. You know, there's history, there's a past, you know, from generations even, that it's being experienced, and being put on other people. And so I think that when we talk about creating this world that we all want to live in, we I think need to take a step back and begin to heal ourselves. And through that, we can heal our relationships in our families, with our kids, with our parents, with, you know, the greater community. And I think that the willingness to do that is what's really necessary for us to be able to move forward in a really powerful way. That willingness and the courage it takes to do that as well.
Simone, thank you. Paula and Simone, thank you so much for being with us on this incredibly important day in American history. I think we have just a couple of quick seconds for the lightning round, which happens to be one of my favorite parts of each of our episodes. Okay, so I'll make this quick. 2 questions for both of you. What advice would you give to your 85-year-old self today? Paula, I'll start with you.
I would tell her to sit back, and I would tell her that she's got everything. She'll figure it out. Don't worry. You've got this. You've always figured it out. You'll figure it out from here.
Love that. Thank you, Paula. Simone.
Yeah, I think it would be more on the lines of like, just dance. All good. Have a dance party, and it's all gonna work itself out.
Okay, last question. What advice do you have for our next president of the United States? Again, we don't know. But given what we do know, what advice would you give? Paula?
My advice would be for him to take up practice of Kundalini yoga. To hire myself and Simone as his chief heart officers.
I love it.
I love it. And I actually could see Joe Biden saying yes to that.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I mean, mine is similar in that, like, you know, do the work, you know, do the work, do the work. It's, you know, it's not all about like, you know, let's make this law and politic or whatever. Like, get real with yourself. And the more real you are with yourself, the more real you can get with other people and create policies that is based on what it is to be real.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Simone. So beautifully stated. Love that advice. And Paula, absolutely agree. I think we could all do a little bit of Kundalini yoga. So actually, this is a really good segue. So for those of you who do want to practice yoga with us, and we promise nothing too strenuous or difficult, Paula actually hosts a Kundalini yoga and health and wellness class with us every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please, if you'd like more information about that and all of our other upcoming programs and our shows, please join us at joinmayshad.com. Make sure to leave a comment in this video and like if you like. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the other side of November 3rd, 2020. I'm Mercer Dahms, the Vice President of U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And don't forget to vote if you haven't voted yet. This is your chance. Have your say. Thanks, everyone. Good night.